On the morning of June 24th, 2010, a white rental car pulled into a quiet trailhead on the western edge of Joshua Tree National Park. The man who climbed out of it had done everything right. His name was Bill Ewasko, 66 years old, a Vietnam veteran, an avid jogger, the kind of careful, deliberate man who read maps for pleasure and had hiked this desert on several trips before. He'd flown in from Georgia to spend a week in the park. He'd left a written itinerary with his girlfriend back home, and he had promised to phone her every single evening to tell her he'd made it back to his car safe. That morning, he packed water, a lunch, a few snacks. He locked the doors, and he walked out toward the high country under a clear, cloudless sky. He was never seen alive again. He didn't call that night. He didn't call the next. And the search that began the following afternoon would become one of the strangest missing person cases in the history of the American wilderness. Because Bill Ewasko didn't make the kind of mistake a beginner makes. As far as anyone can tell, he made no obvious mistake at all. And still, the desert pulled him somewhere no one could follow. This is the story of how one of the most prepared hikers you could imagine walked into Joshua Tree in broad daylight and simply disappeared. And it's the story of why this park, sunlit, crowded, a 2-hour drive from Los Angeles, is far more dangerous than almost anyone gives it credit for. Stage 1, the maze, not the heat. When most of us picture dying in the desert, we picture the heat. The sun overhead, the dry throat, the last swallow of warm water. And the heat here is real. In the week Bill went missing, temperatures in the park climbed close to 100 degrees. But heat is not the first thing Joshua Tree takes from you. The first thing it takes is your sense of direction. Stand in the middle of this park, off the paved road, and look around. What you'll see is boulders, enormous piles of rounded granite, stacked and scattered to the horizon in every direction. And here's the part the photographs never capture. They all look the same. One pile of tan rock looks exactly like the next pile of tan rock, which looks exactly like the pile behind it. Between them run dry washes, shallow sandy channels carved by water that hasn't flowed in months. And those all look the same too. They wind, they fork, they branch off into more washes that fork again. There's no skyline to steer by, no river, no single mountain that always sits to your left. Just a repeating maze of near identical shapes that quietly rotate around you as you walk. You can lose the trail here without ever realizing you've lost it. You step off to get around a boulder, or to find a shadier line, or to get a better look at the view, and when you turn back, the way you came looks like every other direction. Every path looks like the path home. And not one of them is. And this is the cruelest thing about the place. It doesn't feel dangerous. Near the road, it's busy, almost gentle. Families and climbers everywhere, cars lined up along the pavement. It lulls you. But hike one ridge away from whatever trail you were on, just one, and all of that disappears behind the rock. The crowds are gone. The road is gone. You are completely, silently alone, faster than you would ever believe. That's the trap. In a place like Death Valley, you can see for miles, and the danger sits right out in the open. Joshua Tree does the opposite. It hides the way back in plain sight. Long before the heat ever becomes the problem, the disorientation does. The heat just finishes what the confusion starts. Stage 2. Why experience doesn't save you. Now, you might be thinking that this only happens to careless people. Tourists in sandals, first-timers who wander off for a selfie. The uncomfortable truth. At the center of this story is the opposite. The people who vanish in the desert are frequently the experienced ones, the confident ones, the hikers who've done it before and trust themselves to handle it, the exact profile of Bill Ewasko. Consider what the searchers actually found. Several days in, a helicopter finally spotted Bill's rental car parked at the Juniper Flats trailhead, sitting there, pointing him toward Quail Mountain, the highest point in the park. But there was a problem. That wasn't clearly where he'd told anyone he was going. The itinerary he'd left behind listed a scatter of destinations, some of them more than an hour's drive apart. Why he ended up at this particular trailhead on this particular morning, no one has ever been able to explain. And there's a piece of that day that makes it stranger still. Piecing the timeline back together, searchers came to believe Bill had probably already hiked somewhere else earlier, before he ever set out from Juniper Flats, which means that when he started this final walk in the punishing heat of a June afternoon, he may have already been tired, already low on water, with far less margin than anyone watching from the outside would ever have guessed. Then came the detail that turned a sad disappearance into a genuine mystery. 3 days after Bill was last heard from, his cell phone pinged. A single, faint connection to a tower near the town of Yucca Valley, on the far northwestern edge of the park. When investigators worked out the distance, the number stopped them cold. The signal placed his phone roughly 10 miles from that tower. 10 miles, in a direction that made no sense, far outside the entire search area, nowhere near where a man who'd parked at Juniper Flats should ever have been. When rescuers first heard the ping data, many of them flat out didn't believe it. It was too far. It was the wrong way. It couldn't be right. But if it was right, it meant something quietly terrifying. Bill hadn't just gotten a little turned around near his car. The desert had drawn him miles off course, into country he had never planned to enter, one wrong turn compounding into the next, until the map in his head no longer matched the ground under his feet. Before we get into that search and how 12 years of it played out, take 1 second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. This is exactly the kind of case we cover here, the parks that look gentle and aren't. And I want to know what you think while it's fresh. If you lost the trail out here, no signal, no landmarks, would you keep moving to find the way out or stay put and wait? Tell me in the comments. Hold on to your answer, because the next part might change it. Stage 3, what lost becomes. Here's what being lost in Joshua Tree actually turns into. The moment you can't find the trail, the clock starts. You're carrying a day's worth of water, maybe a couple of liters, for what was supposed to be a few hours out and back. That water was never meant to last. The temperature climbs through the afternoon until the rock itself radiates heat back at you. And then, when the sun drops, the desert flips on you. High desert nights can turn shockingly cold, so now you're burning energy, just trying not to freeze. There's no cell signal to call for help. There's no passing stream to refill a bottle. There is only more desert in every direction, all of it looking like the way out. And the terrain fights the people trying to save you just as hard as it fought the person who's lost. The official search ran for about a week. Around 100 trained searchers, helicopters, dogs, and they came up with almost nothing. When the authorities finally stood down, something remarkable happened. Ordinary people refused to. A retired engineer named Tom Mayhood took up the case and kept going for years. And Mahood was no hobbyist. This was the same man who, only months earlier, had finally located the remains of the so-called Death Valley Germans, a family that had vanished into that desert more than a decade before. Mahood and the loose community of searchers who followed his lead went back into Joshua Tree again and again. Over the years that followed, they covered well over 1,000 miles of ground on foot, mapping every ridge and wash, crossing off the blank spaces one expedition at a time. it became one of the most geographically extensive missing person searches in American history. And for more than a decade, all that effort produced the same answer, over and over. Nothing. He simply was not where any of it said he should be. The Discovery, 2022. Then, one morning in February of 2022, nearly 12 years after Bill Ewasko walked away from his car, two backpackers from Tennessee stepped off the trail to catch a better view. And on a hillside in the remote northwest of the park, they found him. The location was almost cruel in what it revealed. He was miles from where he'd parked, out toward that far corner near Yucca Valley, close to where the cell ping had placed him all along, the reading nobody had wanted to trust. He was, by some accounts, only about a mile from a road. He wasn't buried in an unreachable canyon or lost down a mine shaft. He was just out there, on a hill, in a stretch of desert that searchers had circled around for 12 years without ever imagining he could be inside it. And it turned out they had come agonizingly close. More than once over those years, searchers on the ground had passed within a football field or two of that hillside and kept walking. In terrain this repetitive, being that close is the same as being miles away. You can look almost straight at the answer out here and still never see it. The people who had spent the most time looking for him were the most stunned of all. Tom Mahood had said for years that whenever Bill was finally found, the place would somehow make sense in hindsight. That it would be an obvious how did we miss that kind of spot. Instead, even he admitted he couldn't fully fathom how Bill had ended up where he did, or what he had been thinking as he got there. And that is where the mystery stays. The desert doesn't leave a statement behind. We know where Bill Ewasko started, and after 12 years, we finally know where he stopped. Everything in between, every turn, every decision, every hour of that walk is gone. It almost certainly always will be. Maybe that's part of why this case pulled in so many people who never even knew him. A man isn't supposed to just evaporate 2 hours from a major city, not in the age of helicopters and cell towers and satellite maps. And yet, here, one did. The not knowing becomes its own kind of gravity. It's hard to walk away from a question the desert flatly refuses to answer. When you line this case up against the others like it, a pattern comes into focus, and it's the opposite of comforting. The person isn't reckless. He's capable. He's prepared. He's usually alone because he's done this before and doesn't think he needs anyone with him. He steps off the trail for something small and reasonable. And then the landscape does the one thing it's quietly built to do. It takes away every reference point at once until there's no way left to reorient. By the time the mistake is obvious, the water's gone, the sun is dropping, and the way home has dissolved into 1,000 identical shapes. Preparation didn't fail Bill Ewasko. Experience didn't fail him. Joshua Tree defeated the one thing underneath all of it, the ability to know which way is out. The part worth sitting with is this: Joshua Tree isn't even known for this kind of death. It's one of the most famous rock climbing destinations on the planet, and the tragedies here are almost always falls, accidents in named places, on marked routes, with people nearby. A careful hiker walking off into the desert on foot and never being found is the rare, uncanny exception. That's exactly why this one case still haunts the park. It wasn't supposed to be possible. There's a strange lesson buried in these two deserts. Death Valley kills you by showing you everything. Endless open ground, no shade, nowhere to hide from the sun. Joshua Tree kills you by doing the reverse. It surrounds you with landmarks and then makes every one of them a lie. It hides the way back in plain sight. So think back to that clear June morning. A white car at a quiet trailhead. A careful man who had done everything right, locking his doors and walking out into a park 2 hours from a major city, on a trail he had probably walked before. Nothing about that morning looked dangerous. That's the whole point. The most dangerous places aren't always the ones that look deadly. Sometimes they're the ones that look like an easy afternoon, right up until the moment you turn around, and every direction looks like the way home. That's why Joshua Tree is more dangerous than you think. If this is the kind of story that stays with you, subscribe and hit the like button so the next one finds you. And the video on your screen right now is another park that looks harmless and isn't. Go watch it before you plan your next trip.